He would take any object. It was mostly his trains, but it could be anything, and he would rub them past his cheeks, and he would just do this all day long.
And at any month, she's got a one-word vocabulary, and then you begin to notice she doesn't use those words. She doesn't call Mama.
Parents, too, as they watch their child slip further and further out of reach, must know untellable fear and sadness. Their child is there, yet he is gone. At first, a child with autism may seem as normal as these children here. But in their second year, many children with autism turn inward, withdrawing into themselves. In fact, autism comes from the Greek word for self. Often very beautiful, their beauty and growing silence lend them a haunting otherworldly quality. Autism strikes about 1 in 1,000 individuals, affecting far more boys than girls. But because it's a disorder of development, it profoundly limits their experiences of childhood, which form the stepping stones towards maturity. In a child's headlong dash to grow up, small crucial advances may be taken for granted by parents. The way children respond to touch and take interest in others. The way they learn through observation and imitation. The way they thrive on warmth and affection. But children with autism can't take those first vital steps into the world. They remain alone, as if in solitary confinement. Hand flapping, toe walking, rocking, sensitivity to sound and touch. Self-inflicted injury, a pronounced dislike of change. Repetitive, odd behavior that stimulates the senses called stimming. Difficulties with play, imagination, gesture, and communication. An inability to meet your gaze. The symptoms range widely, but at their core lies an extreme autistic aloneness, imprisoning the child within himself.
If you look at her baby pictures until she's about 5 months old, you wouldn't know that anything was wrong, and of course we didn't know that anything was wrong. She was different then. She looked you right in the eye. She did her baby things. She was smiling. She began to change, I would say, maybe between 7 and 10 months. But we didn't notice that. The earliest thing I noticed is that she didn't play hide and seek behind a diaper, you know, when you discover the baby and she laughs.
Clara Park's book, The Siege, chronicles her fight to help her daughter. Jessie was born in the late 50s, when autism was seen as a psychological problem. The misconception probably stemmed from Leo Kanner, who helped identify the disorder. Children with autism were biologically normal, Kanner claimed. They had chosen to withdraw because of their distant, probably professional, cold as a refrigerator mom.
The whole matter of the refrigerator mother, one could not be aware of autism in any way without being aware of this accusation. They bought into it, parents and psychoanalysts, because you want to think that there can be a cure. You want it to be perfect. It was incredibly destructive. I know parents who were told to their faces, you did this and you will not be able to do anything with your child until you recognize this. Go for psychoanalysis. You know, awful, 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 awful.
Dooming those with autism to institutions was widespread in the 40s, when Kanner and Hans Asperger separately identified the disorder. Both men described symptoms ranging from rare abilities to severe mental retardation. Asperger's name is now linked to high-functioning, almost normal autistics, while Kanner's syndrome has become associated with a bleaker outlook. Today, autism is recognized as a biological disorder, although its cause is still a mystery. Evidence of a genetic basis seems to be mounting. Child psychiatrist Peter Zatmari.
I think it's fairly clear that autism is a genetic disorder. In other words, we know that it's inherited and that the siblings of autistic children are at higher risk of having autism themselves than the general population. That just tells us that it runs in families.
We have a 7-year-old son, Greg.
At the Shadok McMaster Hospital in Hamilton, Zatmari studies families with at least 2 children affected with the disorder. He's hoping to trace where the genes associated with autism might lie in the chromosomes.
So far it's been good, yeah, it's been very positive.
How they might cause the disorder remains unclear.
There seems to be some environmental component because not all identical twins are both affected with autism. But when we talk about environmental factors, we have to remember that environmental factors can start very early on in utero. We don't really just mean the environment around us or after the child is born. One of the really important advances in the field has been the notion that this is a neurological disorder, and that environmental events like parenting or how the children were treated as infants don't have any impact on the etiology of the disorder.
In Boston, research into other aspects of autism continues. This is the Ladders Clinic, where children come for observation by neurologist Margaret Bowman.
You're just up and running. Can you come sit? Mom, a book. Can we look at a book?
My style basically is to have the children come to a fairly large room with their parents, and I sit and interview the parents while I'm really watching the child play. What I'm really interested in is what do they do with the toys that are in the room? Do they try to engage their parents? Do they try to engage people in the play? Do they come over and show the parents something? Do they like to be held? Do they like to be cuddled? What's their behavior like in that room? And that probably gives me more information than sitting there with a reflex hammer or looking in their eyes. So it's really very simple.
Are you going to look at the number?
Bowman believes a clue to the mystery of autism may lie in small but unique differences between normal brains and those of people with autism.
49. Okay, good job.
Since 1983, Bowman and her colleagues have been studying the anatomy of the autistic brain. What they discovered were abnormalities in the cerebellum, which affects motor control. The damage seems to have occurred before birth, before the fetus was 30 weeks old. It's at around this time that the basis for an adult wiring system is being established in a normal human brain. Bowman also found abnormalities in the limbic system, which affects the way we feel, behave, and learn. In fact, how we process sensory information. It also affects our memory. These findings tie in with the theory that 2 types of memory shape a child's development. Very small children use a habit or rote-type memory to learn. Around 2, another type comes into play. Called representational, it helps children make sense of things around them. They begin to reason and draw conclusions. This higher form of learning is thought to be dependent on the limbic system.
That dovetails very nicely with what parents frequently tell us. Susie was just fine until about a year and a half, and we moved from Chicago to so-and-so, and suddenly, suddenly or over a period of several days or months or weeks or whatever, her language dropped out, or her behavior became strange, or she became more withdrawn, or what have you. One could at least hypothesize that that has something to do with how this other system sort of falls apart at that level, or at least maybe isn't mature enough to take over at that stage.
Before they even start talking, most toddlers understand it's worth their while. But if that basic fact escapes you, your chances of relating to others quickly fade. At UCLA, Marion Sigmund studies social behavior in small children.
Somewhere around about 8 to 10 months of age, normal infants become very interested in the reactions of other people.
All right.
And by about 13 to 14 months, 15 months maybe, infants begin to look at people a lot when they're enjoying something, as if they want to share this experience. They also look at other people when they're not sure of how to act, so that if something happens that's frightening to them or surprising, they'll look up at another person to see what their reactions are. And this happens to all babies. It's a very common occurrence. And it's so much a part of life that we don't even notice, really, that babies are doing it. But they're really checking to see what we're looking at and how we feel about what we're looking at. So we call this joint attention or shared attention.
What do you want to play with?
Sigmund measured joint attention in the responses of 3 different groups of children to various stimuli. Normal babies, children with Down syndrome, and children with autism.
Very nice. Can you give it to
Children
me?
with autism don't pay much attention to the attention patterns of other people. They don't really look at where other people are looking. It doesn't seem to occur to them that other people have points of view that can be shared. And so they seem very isolated in that sense.
In a similar experiment, Sigmund studied the reactions of children to someone else's pain. It takes a normal baby only a few seconds to realize that someone is hurt. Children with Down syndrome respond readily to the emotions of others. But someone else's distress doesn't seem to touch a child with autism. It's as though emotions are a foreign language he can't interpret. Reacting to other people's fear is a basic survival instinct.
They tell us they have feelings. Their parents tell us that they have feelings. This is another place in which I think our current research shows that the previous understanding of autism was wrong. Their heart rate responses are no different from those of mentally retarded children who are at the same developmental level. So I think that they very much have feelings, but they have a very hard time explaining these feelings to themselves or expressing them in ways that other people can understand.
Like an anthropologist on Mars, that's how Temple Grandin described to author Oliver Sacks the way she relates to others. Labeled autistic as a child, Temple still finds it hard to read emotions.
most other people, when they communicate with each other, when they talk to each other, they get these sort of subconscious little emotional signals back and forth. You see, I don't get that. I have to read the body language like, you know, learning it like school lessons. I had to learn, well, if the person starts going like this, then that means that maybe they're not so open to what you're saying. But I had to learn that by rote. It's sort of almost like being an animal that doesn't have any instincts.
I know how the cow feels, Temple wrote. Her insight placed her at the top of her field as a designer of livestock facilities. A PhD with 2 books to her credit, Temple often feels more at ease with animals.
Autistic emotions are there, but they're simpler. I can be happy, I can be sad, I'll cry at sad movies, but emotions are less complex. I mean, it's hard for me to understand how somebody can love somebody and be jealous at the same time.
Unaffected, without guile, Temple is a high-functioning autistic. Before putting pen to paper, she imagines her intricate designs in minute detail in her head.
You know, if I could snap my fingers and not be autistic, I wouldn't do it. Well, I think in pictures. And thinking in pictures, that's part of me. And it's a great asset to an equipment designer and animal scientist and animal behaviorist. And I wouldn't want to give up on thinking in pictures.
Early on, her mother refused to abandon her to autism, insisting she be taught intensively and well. Now, Temple's an ambassador of autism and a committed teacher.
My mother wrote in one of her letters that love is helping something to grow. And that's basically what I'd like to do. I mean, I want to help my students to grow. And, you know, whether they're my graduate student or whether they're students in my short course, I want to do something to inspire them to go out and be better people.
At the turn of this century, the Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov stumbled on a groundbreaking discovery. Show dog meat, dog salivates. Show dog meat, ring bell, dog salivates. Take away meat, ring bell, dog still salivates. Years later, American psychologist B.F. Skinner applied similar conditioning techniques to education. Many found his ideas crude, put off perhaps by the use of rewards and punishments to shape behavior in children. But by the late 60s, these same ideas, refined into sophisticated teaching techniques, were being used to help children with autism. In New Jersey, the Princeton Child Development Institute has practiced applied behavioral analysis for over 20 years. Its science-based approach to autism attracts professionals from around the world. Of the children under 5 who come here, over half will progress to regular school classrooms. Yet many arrive with almost no language.
Davide, look! Who's that? Da? V? Day. Good. Look at Davide.
Focusing their attention is the first step to learning.
Good. Nice waving. That was great. Davide, show me arms up. Oh, good looking at you with your arms up. Davide, look.
Refuse to let them withdraw. Grab and hold their attention. Reward them with food, coins, tickles, hugs, praise.
Show me jumping. Yay! Good jumping. That was great. Look. Say, I'm cute.
Co-director Patricia Krantz.
These children really are racing against the clock. They need hours of intensive intervention to compensate for what they haven't learned, perhaps in the first 3 years of their lives. If we think about what most 3-year-olds already know, they know who they are in terms of themselves versus other people in their environment. They know something already about what it means to be a boy or a girl. They know something about their identity as a 3-year-old, a child versus an adult. And people with autism don't have those concepts at age 3.
Amtek was almost 4 when he came here, cut off, unable to look you in the eye. 4 months later, he's a different boy.
What's your name?
Okay.
Antek is right. Antek, how are you?
Okay.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. How old are you?
4 years old.
4 years old? Wow, I can't believe it. Are you a boy or a girl?
A boy.
You're so smart. You are a boy. Is this an apple?
No.
No, of course that is not an apple. Good for you. What's my name?
Dawn.
Oh, yes, my name is Dawn. And I like the way you're looking. That earns your last penny for talking to me.
They're principles of really good, positive reinforcement, starting out with something highly meaningful like food, but then progressing to hugs and tickles and laughs and things that the children really learn to enjoy. So it's grabbing their attention. It's turning on their brain to realize this is something I'm supposed to do, and then something I can really enjoy. And that's where communication starts to happen. And it's communication that's rewarded and built up in a behavioral way with the one person that can then be expanded and generalized to interactions with peers, with other adults, whatever.
Imitation comes naturally to most children. These two have to learn. David leads, Antek follows. The bell tells them when to change. Reading is something both 4-year-olds have already mastered. By stressing academic skills early, PCDI can focus on the social behavior these children so urgently need to acquire.
Hello. How is she? And then Bye. Bye. Will beat my partner.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Good. Everybody, hands to hands. Nose to nose.
Nose.
Ear to ear.
Ear.
Back to back.
Back.
Hand to hand.
Hand.
Leg to leg.
Leg.
Snickers and hoots, Snickers and hoots, Snickers and hoots, Snickers and hoots. Whoa! Yay! All right, that was great. Come, let's go back to class.
At first, all seemed right with the world of Mary and Charles Hogarth, until their twin boys reached 18 months. They're 6 now, James.
Bobby, would you like more pizza?
Yes.
And Bobby, and have a younger brother, Andrew. But in their 2nd year, the twins changed. They sat silently for hours. They ignored each other.
I can remember asking our pediatrician, I said, you know, I'm getting a little bit concerned. They're still not talking. And he said, oh, well, you know, they're twins and they're boys, and that usually, you know, developmentally they're delayed. And he said, let's talk about it when they're 2. At 2 years of age, I made an appointment, and as I started telling him about the different things, like they acted like they were deaf, you know, they didn't respond. They didn't seem to understand us. They did strange things, like they lined up their toys. They didn't play with their toys appropriately.
We were given a diagnosis of autism for both of the boys, and you know, at that point it was really up to us to decide what to do about it, you know, where to go from here. And that really is the critical thing, not so much the diagnosis, but what to do about it.
Okay, everybody, stand up. Good, standing up. Everybody?
The Hogarths enrolled the twins at PCDI, where both boys adapted to the structured environment. As children make progress, rewards are faded, becoming more symbolic, less immediate, in order to prepare the children for school, which is where James is headed in the fall.
Okay, everybody, look at me. Touch your nose.
Psychologist Philip
What are you
Heinlein.
doing?
As you watch one of these staff people here interact with these children, it looks like an ordinary teaching sequence. And yet, knowing the principles that are involved, one recognizes that actually it was very carefully crafted, very carefully choreographed. I find it really fascinating because I teach these as principles, and yet what I'm seeing is something very dynamic and ongoing and very quick. If you tried to describe what's going on in terms of the principles that are being applied, it would be like a physicist trying to describe what an ice skater is doing.
Do you want me to shoot you with this water gun?
No way.
No way. Look, do this. No way.
No way.
No way, right? Where's the door?
Over there. Over there.
Over there.
Basic body language,
Over there. Over there.
gestures like pointing, things most of us do automatically, have to be taught.
Where's the door?
Over there.
Over there. Good for you. Look, James. Good. That's good. Who wants the Clifford book?
I do.
Oh, perfect. You said I do. It should be 2 more.
I think the reason it works is that the teaching method breaks down the steps of teaching into components that are manageable for the children to understand and benefit from. So I think it's a revolutionary and just a smart way of reaching these children.
Bobby, when you talk loudly and you look at your dad.
PCDI's intensive teaching methods extend into the home, too.
Hey, Bob.
What are you doing?
Here, Bobby, using an earphone, is helped through a walkie-talkie to hold a normal conversation.
Look, goldfish.
I love goldfish.
Love goldfish.
Would you like
With
some
practice,
goldfish when you're done
it's
putting
hoped
the food
speech
away?
will grow less robotic, more natural, even spontaneous.
I'm done. And then.
You did a great job, Bob. Would you like some goldfish?
Yes.
Here you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You did a great job, Bobby. All right. Good guy. Bob. Good job. You can have a piece of chocolate muffin, okay? You know what? It worked fine. It was just the short. He's still not getting the variety, you know? So maybe we can just practice that around the house, saying sure instead of okay.
Right.
Bob, would you like some muffin? Sure. Sure. Okay.
Okay, I see something yellow. The flowers on the umbrella.
At 6 months, Karen was adopted by the Nelson family. Sue Nelson.
Karen was very normal in many areas and yet had no communication skills. She couldn't speak, she couldn't communicate with people, and yet she could say words, but they didn't mean anything to her. When she was 4, she entered the Princeton Child Development Institute, and they began immediately working on her behavior, which had become quite violent by this time. She was hitting her head with her fist up to 1,000 times in a 10-minute period, just slugging herself. She would kick herself in the shins. She had broken her bones in her leg. She had punched herself in the sides and done kidney damage. She had damaged all parts of her body. What they did at the school was to teach her you get attention for doing positive things. And they started to reinforce the absence of these behaviors. And when Karen's hands would be down and she would be quiet, they would give her a lot of attention, give her a food reward, and make a big deal out of her being good.
Karen, touch your shirt. Very good girl. What a good girl. You touched your shirt. Wonderful. Karen, where do you live? Karen, where do you live? Karen, clap your hands. Good. Wonderful, Karen. What a good girl, Karen. Karen, what's your little brother's name? Karen, what's your little brother's name? Peter. Peter, wonderful, Karen. You said Peter. How good for you.
She really was in danger of taking her own life with the banging she was doing with her head, or losing an eye or something. So They patted her so that then they could work with her and she wouldn't hurt herself.
You did touch the wall. Good for you.
They gradually removed piece by piece of the padding until she had these large padded mitts, which were just hanging from her wrists. They weren't even around her hands. But she needed the security of knowing that they were there. Even today, if you see Karen, she has a bracelet that she wears. And sometimes it's around her wrist and sometimes it's around her hand. And that's her security blanket. That's what's left of being padded from head to toe.
Now 16, Karen still attends school at PCDI. Although fewer girls than boys have autism, girls are often more severely disabled. Teenagers here are taught basic skills to help them take control of their own lives and survive in the outside world. Several times a day, Karen and her peers are encouraged to practice the art of conversation.
I also had breakfast this morning. What'd you have for breakfast? Oh, I had Cheerios. This weekend, I went and saw Bethany play field hockey. That's great. What'd you do? Well, I cheered Bethany so she would get a goal. That's great. Thanks for talking to me. And she did get a goal. Yes. Karen, it's been good talking to you, too.
Okay, what are you going to be doing next?
Originally diagnosed as autistic retarded, Karen might have ended up sedated, like so many others, in an institution. She and other youths, some of whom have jobs, live in a group home. Run by PCDI, Mountain View strives to keep them active and involved. In a variety of ways, they're constantly encouraged to break out of the isolation of autism.
Karen,
What?
do you want to play a game later?
Sure, we'll go to play.
I'd like to play that time.
I think it sounds like fun.
What time should we play?
Let's play after cleanup.
That. What time should we play?
Let's play after cleanup.
That sounds like a good time to play.
Where should we play?
Let's play in the tea room.
That's a good place to play.
I think we'll have a good time.
Me too. Thanks for playing the game.
Me too. Thanks. You're welcome. I'll see you later.
Okay, well, what we'd like to do is in a little while, I'd like you to practice it again. And the next time that you do it, I want you to try it without your sentences, okay? Yes?
I should pick up the word and dictionary. Will you please check it?
Sure. And what's another word for beautiful?
Gorgeous and pretty.
Oh, those are two good words for beautiful. You're so smart.
Thank you.
That's great. You know who looks very beautiful today?
I look beautiful.
You do. You look absolutely beautiful today.
Thank you.
But home for the weekend with her sister and brothers is still Karen's favorite place to be.
Run up, yay! Try again, under your leg, under your leg. There you go, run up, slam dunk. All right. You got it in.
Good job.
Good, good. All right.
I remember the doctor telling me, well, this is lifelong, and there is no such thing as a cure. You're going to hear a lot of things out there. Don't believe any of them. You're going to hear about mega vitamin theories, and you're going to hear about behavior modification, and you're going to hear this and that theory and the other thing. And, you know, I'm here to tell you that this is a lifelong disability, and there's you know, no such thing as a cure for it.
There's at least 5 children that I know personally who've been through a very aggressive course of treatment and education, and they have subsequently lost their diagnosis. They no longer meet the criteria for autism.
She kept telling me about these home programs and how the kids were getting better, and it was 40 hours a week, and my sister had been drilling this kind of into my head for about 6 months. And I remember the doctor when she was giving us the diagnosis said, what we recommend is 2 half-hour sessions of speech per week and 1 half-hour of OT. And that was going to get rid of the cheek rubbing, the 1 half-hour a week of OT. And it was at that point that suddenly it clicked in my head what my sister had been telling me all those months. And I thought, they're telling me that 1.5 hours a week is going to help this child? I mean, he was just so far from us. So we just left. My husband, I just stood up and said, thank you, I have to go, and Roy took my cue and we just left.
Candace immediately called therapist Bridget Taylor. Thanks to the work of behavioral psychologist Ivar Lovas in California, parents were growing aware of the importance of intense treatment as early as possible. It was the end of June. Tori would be 3 in October. There was no time to lose.
Our goal very early on in treatment is to teach very specific directions so that the child is able to learn systematically the teaching process, and we're able to teach responses. Usually the earlier responses might take a long time for the child to master. So for example, I know it took him over 400 trials to learn to imitate a very simple response.
Do this.
We spent weeks trying to teach him to do this, to wave, and he just couldn't do it. To tap on the table. A lot of those very simple imitative things he couldn't do. But once he got it, after a couple of weeks, then he just kind of took off. And he learned we could do any action and he could imitate it.
What do you want?
Mom. Cookie.
Cookie! Good saying, want cookie. Good. Oh, you want to pick? Okay. That's exactly what I like to see. Exactly what I like to see. Exactly what I like to see.
By the end of the summer, he was able to say, I want. You know, and this was just a couple of months after getting the diagnosis. It was a miracle.
What do you want?
Mom. Pudding. Cookie.
Cookie! Good, tell me cookie. All right.
Everything that he learned over the past couple of years, we have had to teach him. Nothing has come, you know. There reached a point where he started learning incidentally, but we had to teach him to point. We had to teach him to say, I don't know. Everything had to be taught.
Put the fish in the train.
Fish in the train.
Yay! You did it! Bring it back. Yay!
I did it.
Now, does that belong in?
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Boo.
Boo, who?
You don't want to cry, Ron.
Now 5, Tori attends regular nursery school where he seems just like any other normal child.
Here, let me see. Show Mrs. Barnes what you were doing.
The term recovery is so new in the field of autism, and professionals are still very reluctant to use that term because it's very subjective. So what do we call these kids? I think that they can be considered recovered from the disability. Do we know what they're going to be like at the age of 20? We don't know. We can speculate based on their development to date what they're going to be like. I'm very optimistic that they will continue to be indistinguishable from their peers.
Some scientists suggest that the brain of a very young child is still plastic, still malleable enough that rigorous therapy could modify abnormal wiring. At the Autism and Brain Development Lab in La Jolla, California, neuroscientist Eric Korshen believes an undersized cerebellum could be setting off a whole cascade of abnormal development.
There may be critical periods. And of course that means that it's during that early critical period that treatment is most stop what's happening before it becomes cemented.
I think what we're doing is probably more preventative than people would think. So for example, if we come in and we start with a child who's 15 months, usually at 15 months you don't see a lot of stereotypic behavior being demonstrated by the child. It's primarily a language problem at that point and a social problem at that point. And so hopefully through aggressive early intervention you are teaching many more adaptive responses and skills, and so the individual doesn't have an opportunity to learn how to engage in other responses that are less adaptive.
Do you think that you
Bridget Taylor now helps run the Alpine Learning Group, a small school in New Jersey founded by parents desperate to help their children.
Grass skirts, yeah. What did they charge, $15?
They've all committed themselves to fundraising, helping out at the school, implementing home programs, and supporting other parents of children with autism.
Parents, they need to weed through a lot, but they need to ultimately arrive at a treatment option that's based on science. And that's what applied behavior analysis is all about. It's not swimming with the dolphins. It's not something where people think that it's going to work. We implement treatment interventions here, and we document the effectiveness of our intervention.
Once it seemed like a life sentence. Now we know that sentence can sometimes be commuted, perhaps even lifted. Now we know there's hope. As long as we intervene early enough, intensively enough, we can rescue many children from the solitary confinement of autism. But the schools we've just seen are the exception, not the rule. Where are other parents to turn? Parents without the resources to hire trained therapists. Somehow we have to find the money to help children with autism in those crucial preschool years. If we don't, the cost to all of us of caring for an untreated adult will be far greater, reaching into the millions. The cost, in terms of human suffering, is not to be measured.
Currently in Canada, we really in no way have adequate assessment or treatment programs for children with autism. I think mainly the assessment centers are within health facilities. And when we're in a very difficult position in terms of prioritizing where dollars are spent, usually dollars will be much more likely to go to a transplant program because that's seen as a life and death situation. If the money is to go to a program for children with autism, many of the people who are making those decisions have no concept of the trauma that the families of children with autism are experiencing. It's absolutely soul-destroying to not feel that you can have any connection with your child. To then learn that there maybe are some treatment possibilities that could help with that process, and yet you can't access them because of the lack of dollars, is even more upsetting for many of our parents.
The important thing is not to mourn over a diagnosis like this, but to get moving and try to do something, try to help your children.
Autism is such a devastating disorder, not only to the child, but to the family, because no matter how hard you try and how hard you work with them, you don't always get a response back. You don't get a hug, you don't get a kiss, you don't get a love you, and you work and you work and you work, and the feedback just isn't there for you. But you have to keep working, because eventually it will be there. And Karen will now run up and give you a hug and say, I love you.
People ask me, what did you do? Obviously you did something right, but throughout, we didn't know. 2 years ago, if you had said to me, that he was going to be starting kindergarten on time, I don't know that I would have believed it. In that respect, I feel very lucky and very blessed that it happened. Because there are a lot of parents who do the same kind of program, but the thing that you will find, I think, with this type of program is that all the children make progress. You just don't know how much progress it's going to be.
Old Macdonald had a farm. Very good. And on that farm he had a cow. With the there and a here, there a here a everywhere a. Old Macdonald had a farm. Yay! Good boy, good singing. That was great.